Lagoon is an oasis in the middle of Utah for roller coaster fans. This park has a decent collection of rides. There's 11 roller coasters total, so today we're gonna rank them up from worst to best. Before we get started, please like this video, please leave a comment down below, and please subscribe to this YouTube channel. The channel growth has been pretty impressive lately, and I'm trying to keep that ball rolling with these consistent uploads. So your support would mean the world to me. Thank you so much. Before we dig into this list, I should say that I visited Lagoon in 2024. I spent 3 days at the park, so I know these coasters pretty well. But I went to the park during a massive heat wave. It was over 100 degrees for all 3 days of the trip, so I was kind of fighting for my life. It did keep the crowds away, so that was a good thing. That's something you should keep in mind throughout this video. Number 11 on the list is Puff the Little Fire Dragon. This is the park's kiddie coaster. It is very, very small, but it is pretty cute. It's really well wooded. I also think it's funny that this coaster has foundations because there's a good chunk of roller coasters at Lagoon that don't have foundations. The fact that the smallest one has foundations and some big thrill rides that we're going to talk about later don't have foundations is just kind of funny. But it is really cute. As I said, it's wooded. The train there's not much to say other than it's cute, and I was able to get the credit even though it was a little embarrassing because kiddie coasters are always so embarrassing to ride. It kind of kills me, but I got it done. I got the credit, and I'm never gonna do it again. Moving on to number 10 is Jetstar 2. So I already have a video about this roller coaster up on the channel. If you haven't watched that video, you should 100% go check it out because this roller coaster gave me the worst roller coaster experience of my life. I'm not even kidding. So if you want to hear the whole story, go ahead and click on that link right there. But as a roller coaster, it is really respectable. It does have interesting seating. It's pretty well known that you can't ride this ride alone. You have to be with someone else, and they kind of act as your restraint to wedge you in the seat, which is just really bizarre. But I only rode this coaster once, and I sat in the back. The 2 largest drops on this coaster actually gave some floater airtime. It wasn't that strong, but because I basically had no restraint, it was really freaky and really fun. So under different circumstances, I would 100% ride it again. And I also appreciate the positive G-forces in those helixes. That's actually really impressive. So it is a fun ride experience, and it's worth doing again. And if I had a better experience, I would definitely rank it higher, but that's just not what happened. So it's down here at number 10. It does get a spot above Puff because Puff is a child's ride, and Jetstar 2 is a real roller coaster. Moving on to number 9 is the park's Wild Mouse. This ride is pretty janky. It's not my favorite Wild Mouse. I know a lot of coaster enthusiasts prefer a mouse like this where it just kind of full sends through the layout, but I prefer a more comfortable ride like Goofy Sky School. This one can be a little aggressive. The brake run is really, really powerful. So this coaster stops on a dime. So on one of my rides on this coaster, I totally got punched in the gut with the restraint, which was not comfortable. But this ride is still pretty good. It's a cool family coaster for this park's lineup. I just wish it wasn't as aggressive as it was. But the turns and the switchbacks are pretty fun. I remember those drops in the second half having some zip. I didn't think it had airtime, maybe light weightlessness during this one hill right here, but other than that, there's not much in terms of airtime. Honestly, for this whole park, there's not much in terms of airtime, which is a little disappointing because if you can't tell from my YouTube channel, I love airtime. Airtime is my favorite aspect of any roller coaster, but Lagoon just doesn't really have it. Moving on to number 8, we have the Bat. So this is a Vekoma suspended family coaster, and these rides get a really bad reputation, but honestly, I didn't think that this one was that bad. I'm pretty sure I only rode it once because I've been on a clone of it at Kings Island, and then later in the summer of 2024, I went to Carowinds and I rode another clone of it. So just get the credit and then focus on the other rides at Lagoon that are specific to this park. But it definitely has the best setting of the Vekoma hang and bangs that I've been on. It is pretty wooded, and I just thought it was a fine family ride. I didn't think it was that rough or anything. Moving on to number 7 is Bombora. So this is very similar to a Vekoma Junior coaster, something like Gadget Go Coaster at Disneyland. There are a ton of these rides everywhere, but this is not a Vekoma. I believe Lagoon designed it themselves, and it had onboard audio, which I did not know until I rode the ride. So that was a really cool surprise. It was a pretty fun layout. It had decent forces for a family ride. It was just pure fun, and the music music was a total vibe, which was completely unexpected. So I would definitely take Bombora over Vekoma's junior coaster layouts. It was a fun little ride, but it wasn't worth spending that much time with. I will say that Bombora, Bat, and the Wild Mouse provide a decent family coaster collection. Like, this lineup is really well rounded for only having 11 coasters. I mean, 11 is a decent chunk. That's more than a lot of parks, that's for sure. But Bombora is definitely the best out of the family style attraction. Moving on to number 6 is Spider. So this ride is really cool. It has that massive spider statue in front of the ride. These layouts are so much fun. I've been on Phoenix at Adventureland. I've been on Undertow at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. I rode the Crushes coaster at Disneyland Paris. So this was like the 4th time I've been on this layout, and it's still a lot of fun. Like, I'm a sucker for spinning coasters. You can make the argument that Spider is a family coaster, but I would say it's like bordering family thrill, like in that range. But if you do consider spinning coasters family coasters, then this layout is probably one of my favorite types of family coasters to ride. Like, it's just so much fun, especially when your car is off balance. You just like go crazy through the layout. There's a ton of fun laterals. The side-to-side motion that it makes is really fun. The drops are actually pretty zippy. Like, after you come off the lift hill, you go all the way down to ground level. And there's just always trains cycling through this layout, which is really cool. Lagoon in general has really great operations, and I feel like Spider is one of the best examples. I spent a lot of time filming this ride because there was always just a train coming down the track. So this is 100% an awesome roller coaster. I did it multiple times. I rode Spider 4 times on my trip to Lagoon because this ride is just pure fun. For reference, I rode Bombora and Bat once, and I rode the Wild Mouse 3 times, which I don't even know why I did that. I can't remember, to be honest. But moving on to number 5 is the park's only wooden coaster, literally called Roller Coaster. This might be the only roller coaster I've ever ridden called Roller Coaster. I think I was a little overhyped on this ride. Like, I would say that this ride has airtime, but it's just not the most. I gave it multiple chances in the front and the back row. It is pretty fun. This ride got new trains relatively recently, and they're GCI trains. But what I found interesting was that they're a little more compact than traditional GCI trains, but the restraints are still the same, and I love these GCI restraints. In my opinion, this ride only has 2 or 3 pops of airtime in row 1. In the front row, cresting into the far turnaround and one of the final hills are 2 of the strongest airtime moments. Considering this ride is so old, it wasn't that rough, but I heard some people describe it as like glass smooth, and that was not the case. Like, it definitely has a few bumps, but it had character. It wasn't painful at all, but I just did not have my expectations set in the right. I do agree that considering how old this ride is, it runs very, very smooth. This ride might have the worst setting of any coaster in the park. Like, it's basically 100% in the parking lot, but that's not that big a deal. It's definitely a fun ride, even if some people overrate it. Like, on paper, this should be the park's airtime machine, and I guess it is because it has a few moments, but no, for a double out and back layout, some of those hills definitely don't hit, which is a little disappointing. But I'm totally being a coaster snob right now because the fact that this ride is as old as it is just very, very impressive. And it's still a quality ride for today's standards, which just is mind-blowing. But you know, I gotta complain about the lack of airtime because I'm just that type of person. I'm just kidding, you know, that's why it's at number 5 and not number 2, you know? That's all I'm saying, relax. Moving on to number 4 is Colossus the Fire Dragon. I am really nostalgic for Schwarzkopf's because I loved Montezuma's Revenge at Knott's Berry Farm. Colossus was the first time I got to experience this layout that Schwarzkopf had. Like, I'd been on Scorpion at Busch Gardens Tampa, which, by the way, I have a review video up if you want to check that out. This is basically Scorpion on steroids. Like, it has 2 loops instead of 1, and those back-to-back circular inversions are very, very forceful. They're so much fun. The transition out of the second loop with that sharp turn along the ground is actually pretty forceful. Like, it'll shove you to the side, which if you're sitting by yourself can be a problem because it'll just throw you around. And then the final helix before the brake run is actually really, really fun. It gets low to the ground, Some of the supports make some like weird wiry noises, but it kind of added to the charm of the ride. Like, I love the minimalist restraints on Schwarzkopfs. I love the forces and the helixes and of course the loops. The drop is pretty fun. I just love these Schwarzkopf ride experiences. At first I was a little disappointed because I thought the back-to-back loops would be just as forceful as the back-to-back loops on Shockwave at Six Flags Over Texas, but I thought they were a little weaker, probably because this ride's a little shorter. But as I rode this ride more, I was consistently graying out, so that was a total nitpick that fell to the side. It's a very smooth and fun roller coaster. The operations on this ride are insane. Like, the coaster parks and then people get out and then people get in and it's back on the track within seconds. It's like insane. One thing that I do have to say is that I did see one ride operator on their phone while a coaster train was in motion, and if you've ever worked in operations before, you know that's a big no-no. I wasn't a Karen about it, but that's just something that's a little concerning, in my opinion. In the station, they are a little stingy about stepping all the way forward to fill in all the rows, because there's like no room for staging. So it can be a little hard to get the back row, but I think I took a couple laps in the back. As much as I like this ride, I do think Montezuma's Revenge was better. Rest in peace. Moving on to number 3 is the park's newest roller coaster. It is Primordial. So this is probably the most unique ride in the park. It is very, very popular. It has an insane finale, which I'm gonna spoil in this video. So go ahead and click to the timestamp on your screen right now if you don't want to hear me talk about it. But this ride is just so cool. I'm not the biggest fan of the shooting mechanic. Like, it kind of sucks. The guns are attached to the car, so the range of motion is very limited. When the shooting first starts, if you're in the back car, you can start shooting before you even reach the screen, so it's kind of weird that the timing doesn't work out, and you can't move your gun to aim at the screen, so it's just kind of weird. By the time that you get to the screen, the front car already cleared out all the targets, so it's just like, bro, what the heck? And then the targets don't respond until after you leave, so the back car gun kind of gets screwed over for some of the shooting games. But this is still a very solid attraction. It's very impressive for a regional amusement park to have a ride like this. And the finale is a drop track or a slide track. In my opinion, the drop track is way better. This might be the best drop track I've ever ridden, and I've been on Verbolten and Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure, but this one might be the tallest. It's just insane. I think the storytelling in this ride could be a little better, like the story isn't communicated that well. It took me a few laps to understand what they were going for, but once again, this is really impressive for a park in Salt Lake City. Like, that's ridiculous. But because I live in Southern California, and I'm a total theme park snob, this ride kind of gives We Have Forbidden Journey at Home vibes, you know? I only got to experience the slide track backwards, and from what I understand, you can do it backwards or forwards, which is pretty interesting. But to be honest, the slide track just felt like a worse drop track. Like, it is really steep. Like, I wasn't sure how it worked until I rode it, but it's like the track is on a track, and that track is at like a pretty steep angle. So it's very close to a drop track, but it's not a drop track. When you get to experience the drop track, it absolutely carries the ride experience. It's by far the best part of the ride. I will say that this outdoor section does have some pretty decent forces, which is pretty surprising. Like, it doesn't look that special, but it is really cool. And the fact that they built a massive mountain for this show building is really impressive. And I like how it's kind of off by itself, so it's a little mystical. This is by far the most popular ride in the park, and it doesn't have great capacity. So try to ride it multiple times so you can get a shot at the drop track. It's a very, very interesting attraction, that's for sure, which is why it ranks at number 3. Moving on to number 2 is another roller coaster that's kind of carried by one element. It is Wicked. This top hat is kind of insane. Like, the vertical launch is so intense. The vertical launch is so much fun. It like pins you to the back of your seat as you're facing upward, which is just such a unique sensation. You feel airtime as you crest the top hat, and then you get another dose as you drop down. The airtime doesn't last all the way down to ground level, but it's still really, really fun. That's by far the best part of Wicked, so it peaks early. But this roll is insane. It's very unique. The profiling is whack, and it kind of gives crazy hang time, but the profiling is very tight, so it like whips you around really quickly. So this element might be the most oxymoron roller coaster element I've ever experienced in my life, because it takes the roll slowly, so you get crazy hang time, but you just whip around so fast. I go into more depth in my Wicked review video, which you should 100% check out if you haven't already. But this ride is really, really bizarre. It totally dies in the second half. The second half has like nothing going for it, which is a shame. This ride was built by Zierer of all manufacturers. I know Zierer as the builders of Jaguar at Knott's Berry Farm, so it was really cool to see Jaguar like grown up into a big boy thrill ride, because honestly I can't tell you how many Zierer coasters are out there. It can't be that many. I think I've only been on 3, the other one being the one at the Mall of America. As far as I know, I don't even know, to be honest. The restraints are very interesting. The shin guards suck, but I lapped this ride over 10 times just because of that top hat and the roll. So it's a very, very interesting ride experience, and it's 100% worth talking about. But obviously there's no discussion. Number 1 is Cannibal. I absolutely love this roller coaster. Just like Wicked, I have a full review video on the channel, which you should check out. The drop is insane. The dive loop on Cannibal might be the most underrated roller coaster inversion I've ever experienced in my entire life. Like, people rave about the dive loops on the RMC Raptors for giving airtime, but in my opinion, this dive loop gives airtime, and Cannibal just has lap bars. So it's just absolutely insane. It's probably one of my favorite inversions out there, and it gets like no hype. The step down back down to ground level was a little disappointing. Like, I was expecting something like the one on Hang Time, but it's not that big a deal. The Lagoon roll has crazy hang time. It's so much fun, and you're so high off the ground during the first roll, like looking down to ground level is pretty scary. And then the second roll has the waterfall element, which is really, really cool. This ride is an absolute beast. It's so tall, it's so fast, it's so steep. This is the steepest roller coaster I've ever been on. So obviously the drop is insane. And the finale, where you're just racing down closer to ground level in a massive figure 8 helix, is actually really cool. Like, I love racing by the waterfall because it mists you, and then you hit the final brake run. So the diversity of forces in this layout is absolutely ridiculous, and it's one of my favorite roller coasters of all time. And that is the roller coaster lineup of Lagoon ranked from worst to best. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? How do you rank the roller coasters of Lagoon? Please let me know down in the comments below. Please like this video, please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I will catch you later.